Hello everybody, I'm just a dude and this is What's Up. In this series, I'll take the time to look through the comment section and answer any questions you guys might have for me. Whether it's silly, serious, or seriously silly, if you'd like me to answer one of your questions, feel free to leave a comment below. With that said, seeing as this is the first episode, I've gone ahead and written down a couple of general questions that you guys might have for me. So starting with, what kind of games do you like to play? Well, if you're a subscriber to my channel, or you've seen one or two of my videos, you've probably already guessed I am a retro gamer. I think anything that was released, say, 2012 and below is fantastic. I love those games. There's just a specific feel to them that modern games don't really have. I guess the best way to put it, besides perhaps nostalgia, is hardware limitation. And I think that's also kind of why I like them so much. The games produced back then were limited by the amount of pixels or the 3D graphics that you were allowed to output. General just game things that we expect now in our modern day games. We expect high-end graphics, we expect long story hours, we expect in-depth like worlds that we can explore. And while there were worlds to explore, while the stories were vast and the gameplay was great in retro games, I think what draws me into them so much is the fact that they were able to, when I say they, I mean developers, when developers were able to convey such strong, bold, interesting stories through the use of this limited hardware that they had. I guess a good example would be the NES is a great example of this. Having only so many pixels on the screen, you can't really fit a whole lot on there, but the games that it produced were so amazing. Like the original Mario Brothers game, that was fantastic and clearly a huge hit, and still is a huge hit. One of the greatest games of all time. Another great game for the SNES was Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past. That is an amazing game. It's not realistic. It's not up to what I would consider today's modern standard of 3D graphics, large open world, what have you. It's condensed. The story is short and to the point. The action is great, and it's easy to pick up and go. And yeah, I actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I think it's good to mention that I grew up playing a lot of these Nintendo games. And I think for good reason. Nintendo is one of my favorite game development companies. While the business practices have varied throughout the years, I think their quality in games, the ones that they produce, are outstanding. And this goes back to ease of play and accessibility. We'll take the Wii, for example. The Wii was released, and it wasn't just marketed towards a young audience or geared towards just boys, like say the Game Boy was, but it was geared towards the family, and a lot of elderly people actually gravitated towards the Wii, not just because of the marketing, but because of the ease of use. There's plenty of examples of this online where lots of older folks or the older generation is able to pick up a Wiimote and play, say, Wii Bowling or Wii Golf, and they enjoy it immensely. And having also grown up with the Wii Sports series, or just the Wii in general, I have to say that Nintendo specifically is really great at making those games accessible yet fun. Fun has always been a priority, not only of theirs, but of mine when I'm looking for a game. So when I go back, or rather when I go to look for what games I should play, either for the channel or during my free time, I look to see, okay, can I get this game easily? Is it easy to play? Am I gonna have fun playing it? And I think a lot of the time, depending on when it was released and who released it, yeah, I'm gonna have a great time playing it. Not to say that I can't enjoy modern games as well, but modern games have almost an unlimited amount of capability. We have better graphics than ever. We have better hardware than ever. We've got plenty of different technologies that allow for even greater accessibility. I think a good example is the PlayStation controller that allows people with hand disabilities to play games, or even 8-Bit Dough. They're a controller company. They've created some controllers that help handicapped folks be able to play games more comfortably if they have hand problems, let's just say. And that's wonderful to see. However, going back to the accessibility of games and whether or not they're fun, I believe that because so many people have access to make games, oversaturates our current market with said games. And that's not a bad thing until you realize that a lot of these people are not necessarily experienced with doing that. And that's okay too, because you gotta start from somewhere, right? But again, having so much out there to look for is kind of overwhelming. Whereas if you go back to, say, the PlayStation 1 consoles, you can quite easily pick out some of the best games from that era, like Crash Bandicoot as an example. Obviously the Final Fantasy series. You've got other games as well. I think there's a Mega Man game on there, Mega Man 8. Those games clearly are great games, and you can pick them out from a crowd of an era. Whereas when it comes to modern games, it is a lot harder to do that, especially since there is so much accessibility with, say, Steam or the Xbox Pass. Again, that's not to devalue the playing of modern games. I just think that people perhaps have, or rather, people that are now developing games don't have a set scope, or they're not limiting themselves to a certain point. And when you have no limit, you aren't trying as hard. I'm not sure that's the correct wording I want to use. But going back to, say, the Game Boy Advanced SP as an example, something like Bok Toy, Sun in Your Hands, that was a game where the actual cartridge had a solar panel like in it, or a solar sensor, and the whole game revolved around that solar sensor. And I think developers, having limited themselves to you have to use this solar sensor, allowed for a pretty remarkable experience, even if it forced me to go outside, which I didn't want to do at all. Or perhaps even the Battle Network series. I believe some of the developers there shared development between that and Bok Toy. The Mega Man Battle Network series is a fantastic series that plays very well with the limitations that it has, that being the grid system within the game. So Bok Toy being hardware centric versus, say, Mega Man Battle Network being gameplay centric. And because the developers limited themselves to this, what is it, a 6x3 grid? 6x3. Having limited themselves to that space, they were able to make an enjoyable experience with what little they had in terms of the gameplay loop. But I think at this point I'm kind of rambling on about that, and I am way over past time with this particular video. Thank you guys for listening to me ramble. I've probably had gameplay footage and maybe some cool music in the background up until this point. But to leave it off on a high note here, I love retro games because of the things that I've listed. And if you want to know more about me, or you just want to maybe have a cool conversation, feel free to leave a comment down below. I'll take a look at it, and next episode I will be sure to look and compile a list of those comments to answer. Thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time.